Hi, folks. Welcome to episode 26 of What in the History. As usual, I am Dan Brady.
As always, as usual, I am Johnny Smith.
Johnny, how are you doing today? It is a wonderful Thursday. You doing good?
Dan, I'm doing so goddamn good. It's bordering on illegal.
Oh, wow. Okay. Damn.
2020 was one of the best years of my life, and
Yeah.
2021 is going even better.
Yeah, 2020 wasn't bad for me. I mean, when we started this podcast, even though I performed stand up every 3 or 4 weeks, I've gotten a whole lot better. And we actually have a date, February 26th in Berea, Ohio, at a lovely family restaurant. Looking forward to that free food.
Yeah, man, that'll be a dope show. Guys, come on out and check it out. We also got, I know for sure, Brandon Petrie, Marcus Cox, Andreas O'Rourke, and potentially a young Joseph Purse.
Ooh, potentially.
Or as I call him, Joey Bags.
Joey Bags. Just got 100,000 followers on TikTok.
Yeah, shout out to my man. Congrats to you, baby. Keep it growing, keep it going. He can do it. I'm proud of him.
I do also want to say Andreas O'Rourke is probably one of the biggest undiscovered talents we have, at least in Pennsylvania right now. Dude is incredible.
Okay, fuck it. We'll give the whole Spare Tire shout out.
Yeah.
Even though I own Tenacious Detail, give Marcus a look up. He's been doing it a bit longer than I have. MC Auto Detailing. Check him out. Reasonable rates. He does great work. When I have questions, he's who I go to. So check him out.
Yeah, bunch of good dudes. Also, that guy Johnny Smith is really talented as well. He has a lot going on. You should check out Tenacious Detail, Inquisitive Minds. And he also co-hosts a history podcast called What in the History?
Yeah. Apparently, he's got some shit in the works too, but I don't know if he wants to mention that or not.
Yeah, actually, myself and Johnny probably coming in the next couple of months. We have I don't even know if we can call it a project, but we are going to launch a second podcast. We are going to call it Murderous States of Mind, where we will look at serial killers state by state.
It's I'm going to be laughing at a lot of unfortunate death. So just keep that in mind. We're coming in. We're still fucking comedians, so it's going to be funny.
And we are going to be recording the first episode very soon on Steve Pinnell, a very evil, sadistic son of a bitch in Delaware, of all friggin' places.
I like how Dan blanket statemented very soon because we have a date scheduled, but as we know, Dan likes to reschedule.
Okay. Hey, man, it's a 2-hour fucking drive for me. Leave me alone.
Dan's like, hey, do you want to record this the day before Valentine's Day? By the way, on Valentine's Day, I'm not spending it with my partner.
Hey, yeah, well, what can you do? It's a Sunday. It's the Daytona 500.
Priorities, folks. That's all.
Priorities.
I now pronounce you man and race.
Oh, man. And if Bubba Wallace wins the Daytona 500, I stand to make about $250. So, yeah.
Oh, real quick. Tom Brady won the Super Bowl again. Ridiculous. The man has 7 rings. And, I know the argument before was he was a system quarterback, blah, 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 blah. Just want to say, if you can't respect greatness, even if you don't like him, you're ridiculous. 7 rings. He's a fucking monster.
Yeah.
Shout out to Tom Brady.
He's one of those people that have talent, but he's also a douchebag. So,
what makes him a douchebag?
The fact that he took a small business loan for his business and didn't need it, and it was a couple $1 million, while else other small businesses across the country got passed over, and eventually, they went out of business.
Is that the only thing?
That, and he kisses his kid on the mouth.
Yeah, I kiss my mother on the mouth sometimes. I love my mom to death. It's a beautiful bond.
No, I'm kidding.
Are those the only 2 things that make him a douchebag?
The Trump hat in his locker. No, I'm kidding.
Okay, folks.
No,
So there we have the hard hitting facts.
No, Tom
seven
Brady. Tom
seven
Brady
time
is
Super
a
Bowl
great
champion.
player, and just like everybody else who has money, we can argue whether or not they are good people.
Absolutely, I like that.
But once you get to NASCAR drivers, everybody has a charity.
Hey man, so Bubba Wallace is your guy. There's a lot of flack from him, and it's veiled because he's not a good driver, but it's because he's black. Is that what's going on?
Well, I wouldn't say he's my guy. He's someone I really want to see win just because there's so many people that hate him. And this really kind of has to do with our episode today because it is, Black History Month. But Bubba Wallace, for 3 years, was stuck in a very, very terrible ride. They didn't have any power or anything like that. But Bubba was still able to place that car second, third, and a very couple of top tens. But the car he drove for hasn't won a race in 20 fucking years. And everybody's like, oh, Bubba sucks. Bubba wrecks all the time. And that's statistically unproven. And everybody also is like, oh, well, he thought that was a noose. He told NASCAR to throw it in the freaking trash. NASCAR is the one that made a big deal out of it. And unfortunately, everybody, including the president, or the former president, has shit on Bubba Wallace. So
Dan's undercover just coming out. It's a Patriot thing. You wouldn't understand. What's up there, Dan? Not my president.
So is anybody looking for, to co-host a history podcast?
Hey, real quick out there, if you don't give a shit about NASCAR like myself, he's owned by Team Jordan. Michael Jordan, shout out 23. A win for Bubba Wallace is a win for Michael Jordan.
Michael Jordan and Denny Hamlin. Not a big fan of Denny Hamlin, but just from what I've heard of how he behaves where he lives at, but I really hope the best for him. I love a good underdog story, and the 23 XL team is 100% a underdog story. But hey, man,
hold on, real quick. You guys heard what Dan qualifies someone to be a douchebag. So we're just going to say the verdict's still out on Danny Hamlin.
Yeah. Well, he's a good race car driver. And then there's guys like Kyle Busch that everybody hates. I'm not a big fan, but the man can drive a race car. And somebody once asked me, like, oh, why is Kyle Busch so unpopular? And it's like, imagine Tom Brady if Tom Brady was a shit talker. Like, Kyle Busch won a race once and everybody booed him. So he did this motion and said, if you don't like that, you should get the hell out of the stands because you're not a racing fan.
I can appreciate Tom Brady's greatness, but he's not my favorite. Brett Favre is. But I will say, if Tom Brady was a shit talker, oh, he'd be my hands down favorite.
Oh, yeah. But speaking of underdog stories, let's get today's subject matter, which is Nelson Mandela. Now, this is somebody that I didn't really know a whole lot about. Nelson Mandela was a South African anti-apartheid revolutionary, a political leader, and a philanthropist who served as president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999. He was the country's first black head of state and the first elected in a fully representative democratic election. Now, we've talked about South Africa before in episode 4, Boer Wars. So we're going to go back here and we're going to talk a little bit about the history to kind of set up this story. What is your knowledge on Nelson Mandela?
He was born, the white man had the rule of South Africa, smart kid, started, wanted some political power, equality type thing. And, when you start screaming for equality, they lock you up. But he did a 5-year bid, and was out, did some more political rousing, then did like 25 years. At one point had the opportunity to get out if he would denounce violence. And he was like, nah, y'all do that shit first. And they were like, fuck you, send him to solitary. And then, excuse me. And he got sick. So he sent him to like a hospital prison, but it was pretty dope setup for him. And after that, he ended up getting out. He became fucking president, first black president. Did some shit. Stepped down in '99. Still talks, still a political figurehead. Ended up divorcing his wife, and I think he died in 2013.
Yeah, he was December 5th, 2013. He was very influential, and a lot of what I read talks about how he would a lot of his writings that he made while he was in prison, and he really gained a following because he was still allowed to contact his friends and stuff. And once he got out, he had the support of the people.
Well, that movie Invictus?
Yeah.
That was the title of a poem that he wrote inside that I don't know if you've ever heard. It is extremely beautiful and extremely motivating.
Yeah, it really is. And I really look forward to you reading that in part 2 or part 3.
You know what? I'm going to be honest too. I'm surprised you didn't have much of a working knowledge of Nelson Mandela.
Yeah. Not war history, I guess.
I mean, his whole life was a war, though.
That's
no,
fair
seriously.
Enough.
He for years, like he did years and years, he fought at a war that he was losing, and still comes out on top.
Yeah, that's on me. I get it. I can't be the fully encompassed history nerd all the time. There are subjects that slip through the cracks, but I know now.
and the fascinating thing was, like, what was it? Apartheid only ended in, I think, 92, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is so current. We think about the 60s and how close to times they were, but like this was in 92.
Right.
And it's not like, and I'm sure once it ended, it wasn't like, okay, guys, racism's over, let's clean it up. I'm sure it was still like, yeah, they can shop here, but we can still treat them like pieces of shit. You know what I mean? It was still rough.
No, 100%. And let's get into the history behind this. We're just there are
I'm gonna take this one real serious. Actually, I'm gonna be like try and be as serious as I can. But there is one thing I'm gonna say that's gonna make you advertise for a new co-host. Dan not knowing about Nelson Mandela is white privilege.
I hate you so much.
Check your fucking privilege, G.
Yeah, and that's 100% it, because yeah, I hate you so much.
Hey, if we can't call ourselves out, though,
I'm not calling myself out. You are.
Yeah, because hey man, got to be brave enough to call ourselves out. I got you, Dan. When my brother falls, I'm here to pick you up. I got you.
I didn't fall though.
Oh, he fell. He fell. I want all of our listeners to feel welcome here, not just guys that go duck hunting.
When have I ever not made it?
Dan, just stand up, get out of the hole, start the episode. For those of you that are just listening, he literally stood up, took his headphones off, sat back down. Here he is.
All right. So there are officially 11 languages in South Africa. It is one of the most diverse nations in the world. The tip of Africa is home to some of the oldest human fossils that have been discovered by archaeologists and anthropologists. The United Nations considers it to be a World Heritage Site. The world is in agreement the area now known as South Africa is likely to be the cradle of all civilization as we know it. As such, the nation of South Africa is a great microcosm of the history of humanity itself. In the present day, the people of South Africa enjoy a multicultural, diverse society that is unrivaled in terms of the variety of cultures that can be found inside of it. To be South African is to be a member of the, quote, Rainbow Nation and a citizen of the second most industrious nation in Africa.
Does the LGBTQ community know about this shit?
Probably not, Johnny.
Somebody better get to the fucking bottom of this.
That's usually what the LGBTQ community does.
Heyo.
Hey, oh. However, along with an above average economy, South Africa is home to great inequality. Poverty is an especially fierce foe on the tip of the continent, which what is a growing problem in many Western nations is a fiercely familiar enemy in South Africa. Various tribes and collectives of people and pre-human ancestors have claimed ownership of the land throughout a period of about 3 million years. According to archaeologists, modern humans have existed in the area for around 170,000 years, but it seems the number is ever growing. Eventually, it was conquered by the Bantu people, and civilization began in earnest in that area with the mastery of iron and metal alloys. Sometime in the 15th century, it was discovered that there could be a sea route around the Cape of Africa, and we discussed this in episode 4, the Boer Wars, how the Dutch East India Company really made this kind of like a stop along their trade route.
Yes, we did.
For many centuries, the ownership of the Cape of Africa was passed around by various Western powers, the Dutch, the British. This created a stew of political and cultural boundaries and mergers that is frankly dizzying at times. It became a land of slaves and owners. Once the Dutch and then the British had their say, the people of South Africa were as divided as they were various. To this day, there are groups of white people who believe they can trace their lineage back to a group of African Dutch and harbor very racist views towards their native Black African and foreign neighbors. Mandela was born in 1918 at a time where the country was moving solidly away from British rule as the sun set on the old empire. During their rule, the country was widely segregated by racial bounds. The balance of power between the English-speaking whites and Afrikaners was not equal. By the time the Natives Lands Act was passed in 1913, Native Africans controlled under 10% of their home country. Now, this Native Lands Act of 1913 was the first major piece of segregation legislation passed by the Union Parliament. It was replaced in 1991. This act decreed that natives were not allowed to buy land from whites and vice versa. Exceptions had to be approved by the governor general. The natives areas left initially totaled less than 10% of the entire land mass. The act further prohibited the practice of serfdom and sharecropping. It has protected existing agreements or arrangements of land hired or leased by both parties. So eventually, South Africa officially claimed its victory from the chains of colonization with the Statute of Westminster. Now, this Statute of Westminster, it gave legal status to the independence of Australia, Canada, the Irish Free State, Newfoundland, New Zealand, and South Africa. So basically, the British, just wiped their hands and, gave the power to the people, quote unquote, in charge of those countries.
Mm-hmm.
The country had been moving in an anti-British direction for some time. Even the white politics agreed that it was time for the country to take fate into its own hands. However, once World War II started, the country was split again. The natives wanted no part of the war between European powers, and the English-speaking whites wanted to help their mother country. After the war, the party known as the National Party, because no good party ever starts with the word national, was elected to power. This would be the beginning of the system known as apartheid. And apartheid is essentially systematic racism.
You got to throw it in the middle, like Democratic National Convention, that type of shit.
Right. So apartheid, again, was a system of institutionalized racial segregation that existed in South Africa from 1948 until the early 1990s.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
The rule of the National Party would be defined by its essential racial qualities. There were white nationalists that wished to see their country become a place of segregation and a bulwark to what would be called micro segregation. At
See,
this,
that gets me, a white nationalist in Africa.
right. At this
Like, come on.
At this point, Mandela was already a man and heavily involved in the political movement to allow rights to all people of South Africa. Because as we're going to see, uh, Mandela was raised with this uh, this sentiment of we are all one people, and he wanted a united South Africa. Over the course of a couple of decades, the government became more and more hostile to dissenting opinions from any that were in opposition to apartheid. So, if you were against apartheid, you were eventually met with violence. This policy was implemented under the guise of being something that would be beneficial to all the people of South Africa. However, it was obvious that the true intention was to provide an institutional apparatus to permanently place white men into power. By 1961, the country had become a republic and started to become a pariah on its own continent. Opposition to the political power of apartheid spread across the world, and the government didn't move an inch. Violence was indeed inevitable. What could simple men do against the power of the republic? Mandela became a part of several groups that stood in opposition to this now entrenched government. There was the Azanian People's Organization, the Pan African Congress, and Nelson's own African National Congress, or the ANC. These organizations were both political and eventually violent in nature. However, it should be noted that these people were fighting the government that rightly felt did not represent them.
See, this is where we're on slippery ground with a sentence like that, because you could argue that about the people that stormed the Capitol. I would say these people were fighting a racist regime.
Yes. No, 100%. They were fighting a country that didn't value them as a people. The government employed security forces and tried to squash the opposition at every turn, humanely or not. Guerrilla tactics were soon the only resort left to the political organizations that wanted to oppose nationalistic power and apartheid. The influence of these groups varied, with fights between opposition groups common. However, the world had been moving away from racial politics following the rise and fall of Hitler's Nazi Germany. Sanctions and international actions were taken against the National Party government. Still, they did not relent. By the 1970s, they had nuclear weapons and were now a global force. During their rise as a nuclear power, Mandela worked steadily as a political activist and a professional rebel. There were many times when he had to hide or disguise himself to avoid the long arm of the law. He was charged with treason at one point, but managed to avoid any permanent damage. Then came the part of his life that everyone knows him for. As a part of his sting, Mandela was captured with another fellow activist. It would be revealed later that the information needed to capture Mandela came from none other than the spooky boys themselves, the CIA, who were afraid of his possible communist sympathies.
Oh my! There we go with that communist sympathy bullshit.
Well, we're going to discuss this, but he wasn't a big fan of the communists because the communists were a atheist ideology, and he didn't like that. But
who is always the biggest anti-communist? People that live in fucking communist places.
See, the thing with the communism stuff though is because the oppressors, the oppressive government of South Africa was capitalistic. So everybody just assumed these people fighting the capitalists were communists. That's all this could be, was communist versus capitalism. Yeah, and that's why it kind of got caught up as this, communism versus capitalist stuff. Soon there was another trial, and this time Mandela would be sentenced to life imprisonment. This was to the dismay of the prosecution, who had demanded the death penalty.
Well, we can't skip over the fact that the first time he went to jail, it was a 5-year stretch.
Yeah.
He didn't just get a slap on the wrist. He got 5 years.
Exactly.
And he got out from that in 1961, I believe it was. And
And
then he went back to prison for life in what, 62?
yeah, soon after that, there was another trial, and this time Mandela would be sentenced to life. This was to the dismay of the prosecution, who demanded the death penalty. Nonetheless, Mandela was transported to Robben Island Prison to serve a sentence for 18 years. Life was brutal, and he was under the command of exclusively white guards, so they showed him respect, some of which took out their own racial frustrations on the defenseless prisoner. By the time the 1980s came around, the whole international climate around Mandela's imprisonment began to change. Ronald Reagan, the United States president, and Margaret Thatcher, the United Kingdom prime minister, both supported the South African nationalists on the grounds that the ANC was sympathetic to communism.
Dan, I want people to keep in mind too, even before 1980, when he was doing that 18-year stint in that specific prison, his influence with the ANC still continued to grow. He wasn't silenced. He still got his word out there, got his message out there. He was still a political leader.
Yeah, like I said earlier, a lot of his teachings and his ideology came while he was a prisoner. He still wrote, and he still, told stories, and he still talked to people. Mandela's prison sentence was continued, but he was transported to another prison after his stay on Robben. It was here that Mandela would escape, but not through some grand scheme. After 27 years, the world Mandela lived in changed around him, but after 27 years, he was free. Eventually, Mandela would win power for his people and the government, and he would.
Dan.
Yes.
You are skipping over so much here, brother.
No, this is just an outline for everything, man. This isn't the actual.
I thought we're doing a whole ass episode right now.
No, this is, like I said in the beginning before I started reading this is just kind of a historical outline of everything we're going to talk about.
Oh, shit. Okay, my bad then, because I'm like, what the fuck is this guy doing today?
I would never, ever do an episode like this, especially not for someone as important as Nelson Mandela.
Well, if any of the listeners were curious, I hope that cleared it up too.
Well, hopefully the listeners were listening when I said this is just a historical background. But
hey, man, you say a lot of words. You can't follow all of them.
I kind of hope you can. That's the whole part of this fucking podcast is I talk and you listen.
Dan's like words, and I'm like, oh yeah, and he's like, yep, that satisfied me. He heard what I said. More words.
The next 2 decades brought about a massive change for South Africa. It is a place of many tribulations from within and without. Poverty in South Africa increased for both the white and black segments of its population, and it suffers from both xenophobia and economic hardships brought upon by a high immigration rate.
And furthermore, you see what happens when I already have a lot of base knowledge about the subject?
Yeah, man. So let's talk about the man himself. Nelson Mandela's actual birthplace is the small village of Vezo on the banks of the winding Bashi River, where his father was a hereditary chief. At this time in the 1918, there was still tribal power. In the 10% that the natives owned the country, it was still divided into tribes. And Nelson Mandela his father was a hereditary tribal chief. Mandela was born in Vezo on July 18th, 1918. And his original name was Rolihlahla Mandela. And at the time, he would later reflect when the First World War was coming into an end, the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia was being consolidated, and the newly formed African National Congress sent a deputation to London to plead for the life of Black South Africans.
That sounds like his evil stepbrother. Say the name again.
Rolihlahla.
It's like, oh, thank God, Nelson Mandela is here to say, listen, no, it is I, Rolihlahla Mandela. They're like, oh
So that is spelled Rolihlahla.
no, Rolihlahla
Yes.
Rolihlahla Mandela.
The British Cape Colony, which which included the National Native Reserve of the Transkei, had. That reminds me of a story. Do we have time for a story, Johnny?
Sure, Dan.
This is a hunting story. So little, my buddy, former friend actually, he shot a doe right in the cheek, and the very very quick kill. The deer literally sat down in the field and fell over. But he had dislocated the jaw, and when we first got to the deer, he just picked it up by the head, shook it, and went so anyway. Guess you had to be there. So the native reserve of Transkei had been absorbed into the Union of South Africa. I guess I'm not allowed to talk unless it's by the script.
I didn't say anything bad. I didn't say anything wrong.
The silence speaks volumes.
I don't know what I was supposed to do with that. I was like, oh, okay, that guy's a weirdo.
Well, we already knew this, Johnny.
Not you, the guy.
Oh yeah, he's a piece of shit.
And then why do you want me to praise him then?
No, I'm just
that guy who's a piece of shit. I'll tell you what, he's a fucking riot, man. He may be a cocksucker, but he's hilarious.
No, I just wanted to laugh or something. I just kind of felt weird saying it. But anyway,
tell the story again.
No, we're good.
Tell the story again.
We don't need to.
Dan, what did the guy go at the end? What sound did he make?
Let's get back to the story.
He made.
Wow, that is so fake.
Dan, oh my God. You really got me on that one, buddy.
All right.
Woo!
Somebody's about to get their mic cut off.
Talk about a knee slapper, eh?
Oh, man. Where's the mute button at? Right there.
I remember at my wedding, we did the Charleston.
What the fuck? Oh, we don't need to talk about my wedding. So the Transkei had, which was a quote unquote national reserve, had been absorbed into the Union of South Africa in 1910. 3 years later, the National Land Act dispossessed hundreds of thousands of black farmers, many of whom trekked to the Transkei, the only large area where Africans could own land. This area had produced more black leaders than any other region of South Africa, and it was with this history that Mandela was brought up. Rolihlahla's father, Hendry Mandela, suffered his own dispossession. The year after his son was born, the local white magistrate summoned Hendry to answer a tribesman complaint about an ox. Hendry refused to come and was promptly charged with insubordination and deposed from the chieftainship, losing most of his cattle, land, and income. The family moved from their ancestral kraal in Vezo to the nearby village of Unu, where the boy Mandela would spend his next few years. Now, this kraal, the kraal is an African and Dutch word also used in South African English for an enclosure for cattle or other livestock located within a settlement or a village. So basically this village had cattle inside of it, and it was just surrounded with a fence.
Oh, I'm sorry. I heard a pause. You stopped talking. I thought you were telling a story.
All right, don't.
No, that's
I thought you were going to take this serious. I thought you were going to take this serious, Johnny. Oh.
Dan, that's a pretty wild way to live with just cows every goddamn where.
Yeah, but hey, man, what can you do?
Fence the fucking cows in their own spot. Buy a little bit more fence.
So, Hendry Mandela was a strict father with the stubbornness which his son suspects he inherited.
Imagine
Uh,
taking a shit and a cow just sticks its head through the front window.
Murr.
Yeah. Like, I know, buddy. My stomach's fucked up.
So Mandela's father was three things. He was four things. He was very strict. He was illiterate. He was pagan, and he was polyamorous.
You sound like a couple of my uncles from the backwoods.
So he inhabited a self-contained rural world with its own established customs and rituals. He had four wives, of whom Nelson Mandela's mother, Sekini Fanny, was the third. Each had their
what
own.
if they accidentally put in a comma where they shouldn't have, and he wasn't just strict and illiterate, but he was like strictly illiterate. He was like, there will be no reading whatsoever.
Nelson, are you learning? Get over here. So each had their own kraal, which was more or less self-sufficient with its own fields, livestock, and vegetables. So Hendry would constantly move amongst these kraals, visiting each of his wife and each of his kids.
Player.
He had four sons, and Nelson was the youngest. Hendry had never became a Christian, but he had Christian friends. He was close to the Bakella brothers, George and Ben, who belonged to a separate tribal group called the Fingos. This group remained a part of the Xhosa people and were more influenced by missionaries and Western customs, many of them becoming teachers, clergymen, or policemen. The Bakella brothers converted Mandela's mother to Methodism, after which she began wearing Western dresses instead of Xhosa garb.
Shout out to Methodism.
She had her son baptized as a Methodist, and later the brothers persuaded both parents that Mandela should go to the local mission school, and he was the first member of his family to do so.
Methodists were like Protestant, like Wild Child, because they're like, yeah, we believe all you believe, except God gave us free will. We can do some shit. God gave us a bunch of free will, and it's like, hey, what's Methodism? And they just start screaming about free will.
Huh.
Actually, not screaming. They quietly sit in the back and raise their hands.
Well, thank you for that explanation of Methodism.
I tell you what, I'm at a Methodist church. I see that offering come around the second time. I know when I got to go to the bathroom.
There was no beds or tables, only mats. The roofs were made of grass together with ropes. They lived largely on maize, which was stored in holes within the corrals. The boys spent the day herding the cattle, and the girls and women of the family prepared the food together in one of the houses, grinding the maize between stones, cooking it in a black three-legged metal pots, and mixing it with sour milk. The family would all take the main meal together in the evening, sitting on the ground, eating from a single dish.
You know, Dan, I gotta point at a question, because you said a phrase that I just can't let go. The boys would spend their day, or the men would spend their day, herding the cattle.
Yes.
Like, they didn't have that much space. Where the fuck are they herding them? Or the parents like, hey, just go outside and walk around with the cows all goddamn day?
I don't fully know. Probably from
all four corners of the
probably from pasture to pasture, you know.
You cows are too dumb to know there's no more fucking food here. Go over there. There's food.
But this simple way of life,
Dan, it's the way they speak to each other. Every time they talk, they're like, move. Cows are self-herding. What are they doing? Move. They're so impatient. Move.
So in his letters and memoirs,
you guys can check me out at Brea, Ohio for more takes like that and funny family stuff.
In his letters and memoir, Mandela often harks back to his life as a country boy. From his prison cell, he wrote vividly about the splendor of the hills and the streams, the pleasure of swimming in the pools, drinking milk straight from the cow's udder, or eating maize roasted on the cob.
My uncle asked me at one point, I was at my grandmother's house when I was a youngster, and he said, hey, and he's down there with a goat. He's like, you want some milk? And I was like, what? And then he squirted milk from the goat's udders into my mouth.
Nice.
Yeah, I've had worse experiences.
I'm sure. As from your stand-up, I know that's true. But when he became president, Mandela would be more insistent in calling himself a country boy, and with more reason for the security and simplicity of his rural upbringing played a crucial part in forming his political confidence.
You know what my uncle has to do with Nelson Mandela?
What?
They're both dead.
That's fair. Many mission-educated children in Mandela's generation were named after British imperial heroes and heroines like Wellington, Kitchener, Adelaide, or Victoria. And at the age of 7, Mandela acquired a new first name to precede Rolihlahla. From now on, you will be Nelson, said his teacher. His mother pronounced it Nalisi, while others would later call him Dalabunga, his circumcision name.
You know, that sounds like a Christmas song. Roll-a-la-la-la-la, are you listening? Roll-a-la-la-la.
His later city friends called him Nelson or Nell.
Deck the halls with roll-a-la-la-la.
Until he expressed a preference for his clan name, Madiba.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Roll-a-la-la-la.
In 1927, Mandela, then age 9, came closer to royalty. His father,
I saw mommy kissing. Roll-a-la-la-la.
His father had been suffering from lung disease and was staying in Mandela's mother's house.
That's the sound you make when you're suffering from lung disease. You'll cough and you go. Roll-a-la-la-la-la.
Well, the whole I'm going to take this episode serious lasted about 5 minutes, and it was a very good 5 minutes.
It was a solid 5 minutes, but this is so much better.
Oh, man. So his father was suffering from a lung disease. His father's friend, Jongintaba, and I nailed that, the region of the Tembu people, was visiting. Now, what's a regent? Is a person appointed to administer a country or tribe because the monarch is a minor or is absent or incapacitated. So that's in reference to Nelson. So this regent, when his father passed, or right when his father was passing on his deathbed, Mandela's sister Mabel overheard Henry telling the regent, "Sir, I leave my orphan to you to educate. I can see he's progressing and aims high. Teach him, and he will respect you." The regent replied, "I will take Rolihlahla and educate him." Soon after this, Henry died. His father
That's like Michael Buffer. Let's get ready to roll. We can do this all episode.
I know we can.
I got roll for
and
days.
I do not look forward to it. His body was carried on a sledge to his first wife's house, and a cow was slaughtered. But he was also given a Christian funeral conducted by the Bacala brothers and was buried in the local cemetery. Mandela was taken by his mother on a long journey by foot from Unu to the Great Place.
You know, this sounds like a mythological story because that's how a lot of them start. They have to travel by foot to the Great Place.
It was it was over here that the regent would preside over Nelson's life. And he would also preside over the people as acting king since the heir apparent was too young to rule.
Michael Jordan wasn't there. The heir apparent was not there.
And this guy was indebted to Mandela's father for recommending him as regent, which may explain why he was so readily agreed to adopt Mandela. Oh, man. Just a heads up. I have listened to pronunciations of this word. It is spelled Mqhekezweni. the place that Nelson went to is nicknamed the Great Place, but it is also known as Kwakazawani. Hardly conforms to the European image of a royal palace. Even today, it remains ruggedly inaccessible and is difficult to reach by car. To the Western visitor today at the Great Place may seem small and remote, but to the young Mandela in 1927, it was the center of the world. And it was a metropolis compared to the huts of Unu. It was here that Mandela spent his most formative years and gained the impressions of kingship which were to influence his whole life. The 9-year-old boy had only arrived with a tin trunk, wearing an old shirt and khaki shorts roughly cut from his father's old riding breeches with a piece of string as a belt. So the regent became Nelson Mandela's new father figure and would influence a big part of his life. John Guntaba was a committed Methodist, though he did enjoy his drink and prayed every day at the nearby church run by his relative. His son Justice, 4 years Mandela's elder, was to be Mandela's role model for the next decade. So everything that Justice did, Mandela did. He went to the same schools. He kind of followed in the same path, if you will.
Okay.
And Mandela was more serious than most of the other boys and hardworking. Again, he was basically raised on a farm. He thrived at the local mission school where he began to learn English from Chambers' English reader written on a slate and speaking the words carefully with a slow formality and the local accent which never left him.
Now, I know when like learning a different language here, like when we take Spanish in high school, some of the sentences we say are so basic. So I can just imagine like someone learning English by themselves and just being like, I witnessed a cat ride by.
I mean, you're thinking too complicated. It's probably like a dog Spot. See how he runs. I like Spot.
All right.
Damn, silence. Okay. A
I mean-
crucial part of Mandela's education lay in observing the region.
I'm taking it serious, goddammit.
No, you're not. He was fascinated by Jongintaba's exercise of his kingship at the periodic tribal meetings to which the Tembu people would travel scores of miles on foot or on horseback. Mandela loved to watch the tribesmen, whether laborers or landowners, as they complained candidly and often fiercely to the regent, who listened for hours and passively and silently until finally at sunset he tried to produce a consensus from the constructing view. So he listened to both sides, and at the end of the day he would pull from both sides. And
He said, I cut the baby in half and both sides can have a piece of the baby.
And of course,
You're like, give me the top half. It shits less.
the Mandela was learning from all this. He would in jail. He would later reflect. One of the marks of a great chief is the ability to keep together all sections of his people, the traditionalists and reformers, conservatives and liberals, and on major questions there are sometimes sharp differences of opinion. The court was particularly strong, and the regent was able to carry the whole community because the court was representatives of all shades of opinion. And as president, Mandela would seek to reach the same kind of consensus in cabinet. And he would always remember Joguntaba's advice that a leader should be like a shepherd, directing his flock from behind by skillful persuasion. Quote, if one or two animals stray, you go out and you draw them back to the flock. That's an important lesson in politics.
Wake up, sheeple.
Jesus Christ. Mandela was brought up with the African notion of human brotherhood, or Ubuntu, which described as a quality of mutual responsibility and compassion. He often quoted the proverb, which is translated to a person is a person because of other people. Or the other translation is you can do nothing if you don't get support of other people. So he had this very, I guess the best way to describe this is we the people mindset. You can't grow if you don't have the support of others.
Yeah, man, that's a beautiful viewpoint. I grew up with a lot of that myself.
Well, in the past year, I've been influenced by a lot of that too. My life has gotten considerably better, essentially because of the people that I have kicked out of my life and the people that I have retained.
Right on. I grew up with a lot of dudes from Nigeria and Ghana and various other places, and then I lived with my aunt and my uncle who was from Rwanda, and I would go on like trips with him and shit. Like so, that whole African mindset of like we the people, like I've literally experienced it, and it shaped my views.
It is truly fascinating going country to country and just seeing how different the ideologies of the people are. And I'm not talking in terms of politics, but how they treat other people.
Yeah, man. I remember I was in Baltimore with my uncle, and like we were with a group of dudes. There was like 15 of them, all from Rwanda. Like they all knew each other and shit. And like the one was like real cool and shit, but he ended up trying to like hold my hand. And I asked my uncle, I was like, "What the fuck is this?" And he was like, "No, no, no, it's nothing like that." He was like, "Over there, it's just like for friendship. It's none of this romantic bullshit." I was like, "Oh, that's nice, but social
Right.
norms."
No, I remember when I was in Singapore and I was on the train system and a hooker told a dude that the next time he called her, he better brush his teeth.
That's real, man. That's real. I had a woman wipe some mayonnaise off the side of my face and then try and get me to pay her for sex in the back of an empty U-Haul truck.
Ooh. No, she was like, no, next time you come, brush teeth. You must brush teeth because I am not doing that again.
Oh man, that's rough. When the hooker's telling you got to brush your shit, bro,
To
it's
be
time to get it together.
to be fair, the guy was probably 80 years old, and I get it.
Hey, at 80 years old, at least he's brushing his ass.
At least he's able to get his dick hard. That's the important takeaway from this conversation.
No, she's just giving him prostate massages.
What the fuck is wrong with that? Okay, we're going in a
No,
very
no,
dark
no,
direction.
no, nothing wrong with it. But he's just using it to piss.
So what you're saying is she's a nurse, not a hooker.
No, no, that's how bad their healthcare system is.
uh, so Mandela regarded this Ubuntu as part of the general philosophy of serving one's fellow man. From his adolescence, he recalled he was viewed as being unusually ready to see the best in others. To him, this was a natural inheritance. Quote, people like ourselves brought up in a rural atmosphere get used to interacting with people at an early age.
I'm sorry, Dan. I was at a 3-quarter house I used to live at, and our parole officer would come there. There was like 4 or 5 of us there, had the same parole officer, and he would piss test us. And one day, there was this old ass dude living in his house who was on parole. And when he came to piss test us, he was in there for like an hour. And at one point, he started screaming at the top of his lungs about his fucking old ass prostate. Just in the bathroom screaming at his dick because he can't piss.
So Nelson would also say people are human beings produced by society in which they live. You encourage people by seeing the good in them.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Mandela's admiration for tribal traditions and democracy was reinforced by the Xhosa history that he picked up from visiting old chiefs and headmen. Many of them were illiterate, but they were masters of the oral tradition, declaiming the epics of past battles like Homeric bards.
La Cosa Hosa Nostra, something history doesn't talk about, the South African mafia.
Oh my God. So in 1934, when Nelson was 16, now got to remember they are still tribalistic and they still have their traditions. So this, what I'm about to talk about, was essentially the rite of passage for South African natives to become a man. Mandela, with 25 other Tambu boys, led by the regent's son Justice, to an isolated valley on the banks of the Bashi River, the traditional setting for the circumcision of future Tambu kings. No rural Xhosa could take office without this ritual. Mandela would vividly remember the ceremony, which marked the coming of manhood. The days spent beforehand with the other boys in the seclusion lodges, singing and dancing with local women on the night before the ceremony. Now, I try to look into this, but I'm guessing that these guys lost their virginity to these women the night before.
And then they got circumcised the next day.
Yes, I don't quote me on that, but just everything I've read, it kind of seems like, dancing and singing with local women the night before. That kind of just seems like what happened.
Well, if that's the case, that's a bit of torture because, I don't know, but from what I understand, uncircumcised sex is much more pleasurable and stimulating because of the nerve endings. So to have it and then get your shit chopped off and then you go back for some more of that and you're like, oh, it'll never be as good. It's almost going to be like a heroin addiction.
They would bathe in the river at dawn, parading in blankets before the elders and the regent himself, who watched the boys to see that they behaved with courage. This whole thing was they were supposed to take this without flinching, and then when when in the middle of the act, they would have to cry out, "I am a man."
I'd be like, y'all got any alternatives to become like, I don't know, a butch woman as long as it don't involve chopping my dick around?
So obviously, Mandela was very.
I am an aggressive woman.
He was very tense and anxious, and when when his foreskin was cut off, he remembered it as feeling like a molten lead flowing through his veins. He briefly forgot his words as he pressed his head into the grass before he too shouted out, "I am a man." But he was conscious that he was not naturally brave. Quote, "I was not as forthright and strong as the other boys." And after ceremony was over, when they had buried their foreskins, they covered their faces in white ochre and then washed it off in the river. Mandela was proud of his new status as a man with a new name, Dalabunga, meaning the founder of the council. He could walk tall and face the challenges of life.
De la Bunda.
Mandela soon had to make a more fundamental social transition into the midst of rigorous mission schooling. The regent was determined to have him properly educated as a prospective counselor to Sabata, the future king. So he sent him to the board school at the Great Methodist Institution of Clarkberry across the Bashi River, which had educated both the regent and his son Justice, and would educate the future king Sabata.
Oh, so that was the equivalent of like, I'm a Princeton man. My father was a Princeton man. You'll be a Princeton man too.
I went to the Methodist Institute at Clarkberry.
Hmm.
The Methodists were the most adventurous, influential of the missionaries.
Oh wow, that's a sentence I never thought I'd fucking hear.
Who had penetrated the Eastern Cape at the same time as British armies, sometimes in
We fucking this cake round here, G.
Brazilian cake farts.
You got some cake on your dick, John?
No, there's a whole subcategory of porn called Brazilian cake farts, and you can guess it's a woman without pants farting on a cake.
Well, I'm not kink shaming, but to me, that's fucking disgusting.
Absolutely.
I don't want farts anywhere involved.
Right, not on my cake.
Yeah, leave my cake the fuck alone. It's almost like a hate crime. I eat so little cake that when I finally get some, if someone farts on it, I'm going to be highly upset.
Right, especially if it's good cake.
Yeah, that's very true.
So, by 1935, the mission schools throughout South Africa registered 342,181 African pupils. And as the historian Leonard Thompson records, they, quote, reached into every African reserve community. Mandela would tailor respect for the missionary tradition while criticizing its paternalism and links with imperialism. By the time of Mandela's uh, schooling in 1934, Clarkberry had become the biggest educational center in Timberland, with a proper tradition of teaching, mainly by British missionaries, that expanded into an imposing group of solid stone buildings, including a teacher training college, a secondary school, and training shops for practical courses, with boys and girls hostels, sports fields, and tennis courts, a self-contained settlement dominating an isolated hillside in the Cabo district with its own busy community.
Dominate him.
In 1934, Clarkberry was near the peak of its achievement. It was run by the Reverend Cecil Harris. Gotta love a good Cecil, who was closely involved with the local Xhosa communities and their chiefs. The regent warned Mandela to treat Harris with the suitable respect as a Tembu at heart, and Mandela shook his hand with awe. This was the first white hand he had ever shaken.
Oh man. It's not a special honor, guys.
No. Well, I mean, it's like living in a very hold on. I'm just explaining why he was so in awe about this. He had never really seen white people before, let alone talk to them.
I said, Dan, it's no big deal. Shaking a white man's hand. Goes, no, let's back that a little bit.
No, to him it was. Okay, Johnny, stop making this about me being white. Stop trying to paint this fucking picture that I'm racist. Okay, I'm just trying to point out that to Nelson, this was a big deal.
Big deal. I'm trying to tell you, white people, it's not an honor.
You're showing your fucking privilege.
Oh boy.
Being able to paint a narrative in your own fucking tongue because you're a white man.
Keep trying, Dan.
Oh no, that was a pretty good effort. He made a aristocratic style.
All right, we're going to turn it up a notch. I was trying to make a joke, but Dan's white guilt kept coming out.
Oh my God.
And he's projecting it, saying it's my privilege. Wow.
Oh.
Wow, keep it going, Dan.
If anybody's looking to co-host a history podcast, please go to Facebook at What in the History Pod or What in the History 814 at Gmail. Please let me know if you're interested.
Yeah, because I need someone who can bring the history without being racially insensitive.
Okay, Johnny.
Yeah, keep trying, fucker. Let's get back to Nelson Mandela.
You're the one who keeps taking us off the rails.
I've been trying to mute the mic so I can hit a dab, but I'm waiting on you to get a long speech going, goddammit. So I figured I'd rile you up so you go into a tirade and try and shut me down.
Oh, you and your drugs. Years later, while in jail, he traced the address of the Harris's daughter, Mavis Knipe, who had been a child when he was at Clarkberry. She was flabbergasted to receive a letter from the famous prisoner. So Mandela was expecting the other pupils to treat him with respect as a royal whose great-grandfather had founded the school. Instead, he was mocked by one girl pupil for his country boy accent, his slowness in class, and for walking in his brand new boots like a horse in spurs. So he gets to this school I mean, kind of expects, because where he was before, he was still viewed as a kind of class of royalty. But once he got to Clarkberry, uh, he realized he wasn't, in terms, that special to other students. So he was bullied. He found himself in a community which respected merit and intelligence other than hereditary status. But after this first shock, he held his own, and with the benefit of his retentive memory, he passed the junior certificate in 2 years.
Well, it sounds like he went there and they just treated him like a regular person. And
Yeah.
he was a little bit fucking weird.
Well, like I said, this was the first time this has really happened to him, but because before he was just flat out showing respect based on his, hereditary royalty, but they didn't give a shit about that here at the hoity-toity Clarkberry,
As they shouldn't have, though,
Right. After 2 years at Clarkberry, Mandela was sent further away to Helltown, a bigger Methodist institution. Helltown was almost as remote as Clarkberry. To reach its students, they had to walk 10 miles from Fort Beaufort along a dirt road which wound through the valley, crossing and recrossing the streams until it was a cluster of fine Victorian buildings with red corrugated roofs looking over a ravine.
When you said Helltown, I thought you were talking about Erie.
The Methodism of Helltown and Clarkberry.
Again, when you said Methodism, I thought you were going to be talking about Erie.
Yeah, and maybe Beaver County.
Yeah, man, we're straight up heroin down here.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, man, we're dope as fuck.
Oh, man.
That should be our slogan, Beaver County, dope as fuck.
Man, I remember I lived in Butler for a couple of years, and I remember when the Chi-Chi's and Beaver County had tainted lettuce and people died.
Yeah, man, now it's usually just tainted heroin. People are like, hey, the people that sell heroin are like, what's my best market? Oh, repeat customers. Well, here, let's put some fentanyl in it and it'll fucking kill them.
So the Methodism of Helltown and Clarkberry did not make a deep religious impact on Mandela. He would never be a true believer in Methodism, although many of his later friends, including his wife, were educated by Methodists. But he would always be influenced by the school's atmosphere, the strict discipline and mental training, the Wesleyan emphasis on paring down ideas to their bare essentials, avoiding frills and distractions. He would always disapprove of heavy drinking or swearing or ripping dabs while trying to do a podcast, and the self-reliance in these boarding school surroundings would add to his fortitude. Mandela was immersed not just in Methodism, but in British history and geography. Quote, as a teenager in the countryside, I knew about London and Glasgow as much as I knew about Cape Town and Johannesburg. He would recall from jail 50 years later, writing to the Lord Provost of Glasgow and mentioning Scots patriots like William Wallace, Robert the Bruce, and the Earl of Argyll. But he was resistant to becoming a Black Englishman and took pride in his own Xhosa culture, encouraged by his history teacher, the much like Weaver Nawana. He added his own oral history to the accounts of the Xhosa Wars already familiar to the boy. Mandela won the prize for the best Xhosa essay in 1938.
Wow, that's impressive.
So in 1936, there were more serious political protests when the government's new Herzog bills removed blacks from the common voters' roll and abolished the title deeds of the local Finingo people, who were in turn disillusioned by the failure of the missionary staff to defend their interests. So we're starting to get this, it was already there, but this dissent against the government.
You know, if the viewers are watching, I wanted to say that first dab I took was bad because my lighter fluid and my torch was going out. So I took the second one just to show you guys we don't just talk it, we live it as a powerhouse around here. Nelson Mandela is impressive, though. 1938, boom.
But at this time, Mandela was only vaguely aware of Black politics. It was in Helltown he first heard about the African National Congress, which was set up in 1912. The Tembu king had paid 30 cattle to enroll his own tribe in it, yet to Mandela, it was, quote, something vague located in the distant past. The mission teachers were inclined to ascribe any political protesters to agitators stirred up by the communism. Most saw themselves as educating a small elite who were quite different from, quote, ordinary blacks. As one indigenous government official explained to them, they were dealing with the layer of fertile soil on top, while he dealt with the hard rock, which was impervious to change. Mandela was still torn between the two aspects of British presence in South Africa, the brutal military subjugation of the Xhosas and the enlightened influence of liberal English education. So Mandela graduated from Helltown in 1938 and the next year went on to a university at Fort Hare, a few miles from Helltown and a mile from the Great Missionary School of Levedale, to which it was linked. The regent brought him a three-piece suit. Quote, we thought there could never be anyone smarter than him at Fort Hill.
Oh, okay. It's good to hear his colleagues talking about him like that. But you know what? His intelligence, I imagine, was more social.
Yes.
Because you talk to someone who's really smart about a specific topic, and it doesn't come across like Nelson Mandela.
Well, he was also getting a very well-rounded education too.
Okay, fair enough.
And he was also raised in these tribal traditions. So not only was he raised with that knowledge, but he's also being taught everything else too.
Okay.
So the South African Native College at Fort Hare was a tiny black university, the only one in South Africa. In 1938, it was only 23 years old, having been set up, surprisingly, in the midst of the First World War. So very small university, Mandela was never at the heart of this, was never really considered an intellectual elite. But I lost myself.
He was never an intellectual elite.
Yeah, I got a little ahead of myself. The Fort Hare, which Mandela joined in 1939, was a small, compact institution with a quadrangle of simple buildings surrounded by student hostels.
Hey, by the way, buddy, that shows I was listening.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you. Let's see. Soon after Mandela arrived at Fort Hare, Britain declared war on Germany, and Prime Minister Jan Smuts, that's a good name, immediately announced that South Africa was entering the war on the British side. When Smuts
I used to date a few of her relatives.
Oh, yeah?
At least I think they were. I don't remember their names. I can just remember they were Smuts.
When Smuts came to
That's
talk
terrible.
to the
I'm sorry, ladies. That was a bad joke. I'm sorry, ladies.
At Fort Hare, you should apologize to everybody for that bad joke. At Fort Hare, they nearly all applauded him, including Mandela, who was relieved that Smuts' English accent was almost as poor as his own.
I want to apologize for all those times I wasted $40 before I gave it up.
Mandela was eagerly supported Britain's stand against Hitler and remained fascinated by Winston Churchill. Over 50 years later, Mandela would tell Churchill's daughter, Mary, how he listened to his wartime broadcast at Fort Hare and recalled how Churchill had escaped from the Afrikaners during the Boer War.
You know, Churchill looks like what I would think an anthropomorphic peach would look like. Just an angry peach because it's supposed to be so sweet on the inside. He's angry on the outside.
Churchill will definitely be a dive. Definitely.
He's got a pit inside of him.
We will fight on the land. We will
James
fight
and the Giant Churchill.
But at 22, Mandela remembered neither war nor politics were my concern.
James and the Giant Peach was my favorite book I've read that I've never read.
Yeah,
it was
great
read,
movie.
It was read aloud to me when I was young.
Mandela seemed to have golden prospects as a future civil servant, but they were to be smashed by his rebelliousness.
Shout out to Miss Gamble for reading that out to me. By the way, first teacher I ever saw smoking a cigarette, blew my mind.
I have never actually seen a teacher smoke a cigarette.
One of my teachers was caught smoking a dick in the park one time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How do you smoke one of those? Do you like cut it off? Do you peel the skin off?
No, he was just sucking his partner's dick.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, that's all. But I remember that was a big deal. And then I knew the guy who got caught with Cordell Stewart.
Oh.
Yeah, I was locked up with the dude who got caught with Cordell Stewart.
Cordell.
Yes, Slash.
Oh, man. One of the dark spots of Steeler history for sure.
Why is that a dark spot?
I just remember those years.
That's because people were racist. Cordell Stewart was dope. He was better than fucking bitch ass Tommy Maddox, who they brought in. Oh, I
served with Maddox's cousin.
Wow. I mean, I have no, I don't got nothing to say about him, obviously.
No, he was terrible. The years leading up to 2002, 2003.
Trash.
Yeah, Tommy Maddox's cousin would actually talk shit on his cousin, like, oh, he's a bitch. He can't throw a ball.
I mean, he could throw a fucking ball. I mean, he's obviously better than anyone I know personally at professional football, but I hated him as our quarterback. Like, I had no love for him. And I didn't even care for his story. Like, oh, he was just pumping gas. Like, I don't give a shit.
Oh, man.
And like, you're not the future, old man.
Yeah.
And then fucking Ben came in and then went 15-1. And I was like, oh, shit, he's amazing.
Right.
And then he put his head through a windshield and he's like, fuck it. You think I'm bad? Let's go win a Super Bowl, bitches.
So in 1941, at the age of 22, Mandela
Ben's so good, you can put rape allegations to the side sometimes. Like, they're like, didn't he? You're like, allegedly. Well, nothing was proven in court.
That goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of this episode. Anybody with money can be considered a douchebag from some aspect. For Ben, that's because he doesn't understand the word no.
You know what, Big Ben? If you're listening, brother, I don't know what you're doing this next season, but I thank you for what you did for the team.
Yeah, he was definitely a very intricate part of the Steeler offense for, since 2004.
He was Tommy Toughnuts, man.
He still is.
Yeah, he's big as shit, too. I detailed one of his Audis that he would get on a demo.
Nice. Yeah, I still remember one game. I think it was against the 49ers a couple of years ago. He played with a broken foot.
Oh, man. Speaking of tough as nuts, and we're going to get back on topic here, but I don't know if you remember Byron Leftwich. I think he's some type of coach for the Buccaneers now.
Yeah.
He was a backup for the Steelers, but he was the quarterback for Jacksonville for a while.
Yeah.
And when he was in a college game, he broke his fucking leg and continued the game, and the lineman would carry him to the line of scrimmage. Like, he's tough as fucking nails for that shit.
One of my old roommates in the Marine Corps, that's incredible. One of my old roommates.
Yeah, that is incredible. Like, what the fuck?
He actually went to high school with Big Ben's sister.
Imagine you're the backup, Dan, and you're like, I can go in. He's broken his leg. They're like, no, fuck you. You're not going in. He's going to go stay with a broken leg. You're so terrible. He's going to stay with a broken leg.
But I was, of course, you asked the question, oh, is she hot? And he's like, She looks like Ben with a wig.
That's funny. I had a guy in the car, an older fella who was like in college with Dan Marino at Pitt at the time. And he was like, for a while, Marino did a lot of gambling, a lot of coke. And then he got with his wife and like cleaned it up pretty good. And I'm like, huh, never knew that.
Yeah, you need an influence in your life.
Man, we are, I'm sorry, but we are way off topic. And I don't know if that, whose fault that was, but I apologize.
Blame it on us being friends. But you need good influences in your life, like Nelson Mandela.
Man, this is going to bother me until I get this out because we were talking about Ben being a big dude. And like, it's so fascinating because I've met several Steeler players and they have such different body types. Like I met Hines Ward and he's skinny as shit. Like he's tiny. What's his name? Like Troy Polamalu is just a bigger built dude. But like fucking, I met Jerome Bettis and we're the same height, but he's like side by side, me put together, and his hands are like fucking baseball mitts.
Well, he was originally meant to be a fullback, and those dudes are freaking huge.
He's a giant. And at my height, he's still a giant.
I bet you our listeners are like, man, these guys have never talked sports before. What the fuck is this?
I kind of strong armed Jerome Bettis one time.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. So we're at this charity or some type of fundraising shit with my little sister, but it was the one who was living with me and my wife at the time. And we didn't know it was like a fancy dress up thing. We didn't know what the fuck it was. She just sprung it on us, but we went and it was at Heinz Field and it was like a charity event. And there was a bunch of Steelers there and like old Steelers too. And like we're getting pictures with people. And like she got a picture with Jerome Bettis and like it's my turn. He goes turn away. I grabbed his arm. I was like, my turn, and like pulled him and like he looked like fire in his eyes, but then he took the picture real quick. It's like if there wasn't cameras here, he would probably knock me the fuck out.
Damn, I don't really have stories with athletes.
That was like the third time I met him. He used to come to my high school for some reason.
I've met Tom Miranda, who is a bow hunter and a trapper who has been very influential in my outdoor life. I learned a lot from him. Met him. I actually paid. There was an outdoor show here in Erie, and it was like $30. You get a VIP. It was with 10 other people, but you just got to sit and talk to him for over an hour. And I stayed behind just, talking to him, asking him about sets and stuff like that. Very good dude.
Right on. That's dope.
Yeah. So anyway, who didn't meet Tom Miranda?
There's no proof of that.
Nelson Mandela.
There's no proof of that. He probably could have met him.
Maybe. You know where Tom Miranda wasn't in 1941? The city of Johannesburg. Is that better?
That's better.
Mandela went with his friend Justice, remember, who was an appointed mentor. Mandela followed him to Johannesburg, and he was one of thousands of rural natives who arrived every year in the quote-unquote city of gold, most of them in blankets or tattered clothes, hoping to find a job as mine workers, servants, or laborers.
God damn, that's bleak.
Yeah.
Let's go get a job. What are we going to do? We can be a mine worker, we can be a servant, or we can be a fucking backbreaking laborer.
Yeah, it's kind of also like in America too, at a time when, college education wasn't attainable, a lot of guys worked on farms, even boys worked in mines.
I did a lot of that farmhand shit growing up. Fuck all that.
Yeah, I worked on a turkey farm for 3 years when I was younger and also helped pick corn.
Oh man, always fucking stupid shit. I remember, and then at one point I was doing that during the day and then going to night school. And I spilled a fucking pig trough all over my goddamn pants and didn't have time. So I went into class with that shit on my fucking leg.
So he arrived in South Africa and his life was... Hey, man, we just got a little bit left. Okay. His time in Johannesburg separated him in space and spirit from the village life because for his entire life, he lived in a rural community. This is the first time that he ever went to a big city. And
So what you're saying is Nelson Mandela started out as a hillbilly.
basically, he's a self-proclaimed country boy.
It's probably never heard this, but Nelson Mandela, you fucking hick.
I'm sure he's heard several things, Johnny.
Hopefully not that. And hopefully that doesn't even come close to the top 10 worst things he's heard.
I mean, what do you mean? Hopefully, like if that's the number one thing he heard, then that's a lot better because we know what he heard.
He heard, I don't fucking know. He heard lyrics in his head. He sung a song of peace. What else did he do?
He probably heard the word that begins with an N, and I am not allowed to say.
We're trying to steer away from it. I tried to pivot.
Oh man, you were doing a terrible job.
I said he heard lyrics in his head. He sung a song of peace. What else did he do, Dan? And you were like, well, let's go back to the N-bomb.
His entire life was racism. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to sugarcoat it.
No, that's true. That's true. That's fair.
His entire life, he fought to be treated equal. He heard that word several fucking times. I guarantee it.
Was it as prevalent as an insult in South Africa, though?
Or
is that more of an American thing?
We had to have gotten.
And forgive my ignorance for not knowing.
I don't know the history of that word, but I'm going to guess that we got it from somebody else. And those people were British.
Not to be fair, we're pretty, when it comes to racism, we're ahead of the curve.
But we learned slavery and racism from the people.
What do we say every episode? USA. USA.
No, this is United Kingdom. United Kingdom.
Oh, that's just, oh, blimey, that doesn't sound correct.
Neither did that. Oh, man.
Fuck those lima bean eaters.
Like, I was never really a country boy. I mean, I grew up in Erie, which is a smaller city, but I still remember the first fucking time I went to Los Angeles. Like, Jesus Christ, those buildings never stop.
I fucking grew up in the city, but I did all the country bullshit because of my family.
So, yeah. So he wanted to become, or at least a lot of people in his life noted that he would be an excellent lawyer. So when he left for Johannesburg, Mandela's options opened up again. He would set out to work on finishing the degree that he started by taking correspondence courses from the University of South Africa. Mandela would need help along the way. So
I don't think I would be a great lawyer per se, but I think I would be an extremely annoying lawyer.
Yeah, I can
people would not want to argue against me. They're like, oh, I don't want to fucking fight against this dude in court. God damn it, he's annoying.
Through a mutual
we'll try doing a podcast with him.
I plead the fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So through a mutual friend, Mandela met a man named Walter Sisulu, another transplant from Thembu village life. Sisulu had already been in Johannesburg and made quite a name for himself. He was also a member of the African National Congress, and so the pieces began to fall in place for Mandela. Sisulu ran a real estate business in Johannesburg and lived in a township known as Orlando. He had a larger-than-life personality and spent much of his early life working odd jobs, once leading a strike at a biscuit factory that he was soon fired from.
I've worked a lot of odd jobs myself. One has never been a biscuit factory. And I've never led a revolt at any type of factory.
So I'm going to guess, because this is South Africa with heavy British influences, when they talk about biscuits, they're basically talking about cookies. What?
Nothing.
This was the theme for Mandela's next. I'm just letting you know, Johnny.
My quarrel's not with you, Dan. It's with the terms.
This was the theme for Mandela's next chapter. He was introduced to the world of capitalism and a national scale in Johannesburg. Mandela would also work side jobs in industries that were heavily exploitative, urging him a different perspective. At the time, communism was an influential force in South Africa. And we already talked about this, but this was really just because the forces of oppression for Native Africans were staunch defenders of capitalism. So, it's just like this whole ideology started because, oh, these guys do this, and because they're mean to us, that means it comes directly from capitalism. And we don't have time to start this huge tirade on the evilness of communism, the evilness of capitalism. Just the narrative of the story. The bad vibes between Africans and their white peers reached such a point, again, because the natives were opposed to fighting Hitler in World War II. The cultural lines were the strongest in that battle, but Mandela and his fellow ANC compatriots would see the stigmatism around communism follow them throughout their struggle. So basically, because the ANC and the plight of the Native Africans was surrounded with communism, they were automatically evil. Again, we've seen this throughout history. We talked about it in episode 13, the Korean War, and several other episodes too. Just this, whenever anybody mentions the C word, it's automatically viewed as, oh, these people are bad.
Yeah, man, I said the C word on stage one time. The ladies did not like it.
Yeah, it's one of those words that cut sharp.
I was like, what are you, a fucking communist? And I swear to God, this happened. I said something, and she was like, boo. I was like, what are you, a fucking communist? And she was like, don't fucking judge me. I was like, Jesus Christ, are you serious? Like, that, what?
So Sisulu had connections that would be able to power Mandela to the life he dreamed of. The journey started with a firm known as Witkin, Sadilewski, and Edelman. They were known throughout the city as being one of the only law firms that treated the Native African clientele equally.
And didn't they have little pastries with the end caps?
Sisulu had seen great promise in Mandela because he used the favor he amassed with the law firm to land Mandela a position as a clerk. And he also would pay for Mandela's tuition at the University of South Africa.
This Danish is out of order. In fact, so it's going to be on sale for 25% off all weekend at Shop and Save. I object to those sale prices on those bear claws this weekend, folks. Make sure you get a box.
So remember the regent that helped raise Mandela, Jongabitaba?
Absolutely, it rolls right off the tongue.
He traveled to Johannesburg, and he saw that his protege had created an influential, industrious life for himself, and the relationship between the two began to grow. He began to send Mandela an allowance, and the two would find peace again. Unfortunately, Jongintaba died soon after, and the allowance stopped.
At least they made amends.
Exactly. Mandela went back to his hometown and spent some time collecting himself. He remembered how his father figure would listen to his ideas, even when he already disagreed with them. He knew that that was how a leader would become great, and decided to spend his life emulating them.
I spend my life on Nintendo emulators.
So this is where we're going to end part one this week, right before we get into Mandela's dealings with apartheid and the African National Congress. We talked about his early life and his education and his influence that led Mandela to be Mandela.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for listening. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. As usual, for What in the History, I'm Johnny Smith.
And I'm Dan Brady.
Peace and love, everybody.
Peace and love. Tune in next week for part 2.